A very good morning to all the students of class 12th political science. And students, as you know, we were doing the second chapter of your part 1, that is the contemporary world politics, and the name of this second chapter is the end of bipolarity. So we had already finished two parts, important parts of this chapter. Now we end into the third part of this chapter. So if you have watched my videos on LMS portal, or also you have attended the Zoom class, so you will be able to relate all those points with this particular topic, that is, why did the Soviet Union disintegrate. It means we have already discussed all the important factors and causes which led to the disintegration or collapse of such a powerful union, that was Soviet Union, that is USSR. We have discussed about all the factors, but now we are going to combine those all the factors into one topic, that is this topic, why did the Soviet Union disintegrate. And this can be a direct question in the board exam also. So in this I shall also be telling you what are the important points which you have to mention in the question, if the question is for 6 marks even. Okay, so this question is important from the point of view of this particular chapter. So whatever we have done in two parts, today we are going to all combine all those factors in this particular topic, but in detail. We'll be doing detailing. But before I start the content of your NCERT book, I would also like to share some notes for you, so you can able to write your answers properly. Yes, so you can see the same question is here. Why did the Soviet Union disintegrate? I have discussed that, but again I'm showing you some important points which you have to take out from this paragraph, which we are going to cover today from your NCERT book. So the first part would be the internal weakness of Soviet political and economic institutions. I'm going to explain you these points in the NCERT book. Just now I'm reading it, so just see it carefully. So the internal weakness of Soviet political and economic institution failed to meet the aspiration of people were responsible for the collapse of the system. So for the disintegration of USSR, this is one of the important reason, but this is not the only reason. There were many other factors as well. The second was, at the same time, ordinary citizens became more knowledgeable about the economic advances of the West world. And the third factor we have read in the last part, that is about Gorbachev. Gorbachev reforms promised to deal with these problems, but slow rate of Gorbachev's reform, whatever reforms Gorbachev was making, the rate was very slow at which he was moving. Shortages of consumer good, we have read about this also, shortage of consumer good due to prolonged economic stagnation. And the last one, Soviet economy was used much on its nuclear and military developments. So there is not a single point which we have not discussed till now. So all these points we are going to discuss in detail in today's lecture. So you can see it from here under this topic. How did the second most powerful country in the world suddenly disintegrate? Second most powerful, it means we are talking about the Cold War, when there were two superpowers, US and USSR. So how does such a powerful nation, which became so powerful after Second World War, suddenly it collapsed? Okay, it was like buried and dead, as we have read. So this is a question worth asking, not just to understand Soviet Union and to end communalism, but also because it is not the first and may not be the last political system to collapse. Although it is not just important to know about Soviet Union, that how and what were the factors, reasons why this such a strong system collapsed, but knowledge of this system and factors which we will read, that why these such an important and powerful nation disintegrated, we'll get to learn lot of lessons from the mistakes done by such a union. So while there are unique features of the Soviet collapse, so we will be reading various important factors as I have shown you in my notes also. So apart from these unique features which were reason for the collapse of USSR, there may be more general lessons. So we will be learning many lessons also from the story of the disintegration of Soviet Union. So it is not important that we have to understand Soviet Union, what was Soviet Union, how it disintegrated, what were the reasons and factors which led to the disintegration, what were the consequences. But after reading all those factors, we will learn many lessons, and in future no other political system makes such mistakes. So we always that is why we say that we learn from our mistakes. So from this chapter, from this incident of Soviet Union, we'll also try to understand and learn something in our life. So as you have seen in my notes also, so I'm starting with the first point. What were the reasons why did Soviet Union disintegrate? So this I have written in short. So in the answer, you're not going to read and write the whole thing. So in that I have mentioned there is no doubt that the internal weakness. So first and foremost factor will be internal weakness of Soviet political and economic institution. They were internally becoming very weak in terms of their political system and economical system, which failed to, because these political and economic institutions which were running Soviet Union, they failed to meet the aspiration of people, where people were not happy with the political and economic system. They were living a very difficult life, their aspirations were not fulfilled, okay, their wishes, demands were unfilled filled. So all these reasons were also responsible for the collapse of the system. Economic stagnation, you can understand, where we are we are stood at a single place, where we keep on decreasing our resources. So economic stagnation, जहाँ पे हमारा कोई improvement नहीं होता है, we keep degrading. So economic stagnation, for many years we do not improve, we do not move forward, we stay at the same place, or we start degrading. So economic stagnation for many years led to the severe consumer shortage, and because of this economic stagnation for many years, this led to the shortages in the consumer goods, and large section of the Soviet society began to doubt and question the system, and do so openly. So here now the people and of the various republics, which were the 14 republics plus Russia, all the people started demonstration, where they felt that system was not powerful enough to tackle with the problems of the people. They understood that the lifestyle they wanted cannot be provided to all of them by under USSR by following the ideology of socialism and communalism. So here people started realizing. So here you will find the explanation. The first point I have read, that is, there was no doubt that internal weakness of Soviet political and economic institution was one of the important reasons for the disintegration of Soviet Union. But if you see here, why did the Soviet Union become so weak? Now we have to see why it became so weak. Why did economy stagnant? जो उनकी economy थी वो stagnant क्यों हो गई थी, एक ही जगह में अटक गई थी. It means, okay, there was no improvement. In fact, decrease होती जा रही थी, weak होती जा रही थी. So the answer is perfectly clear. The Soviet economy used much of its resources in maintaining a nuclear and military arsenals. This we had discussed in the first lecture also, and in the class also. There was an arm race going on, as there were two superpowers, though they were in a race that who has the more number of nuclear weapons and missiles and arsenals. So Soviet Union was investing most of its economy in maintaining that nuclear military arsenal and nuclear weapons, and the development of its satellite states. And these satellite states means these are the states which were the Eastern European countries, the 8 countries which I told you was which were the part of Europe. And these Eastern Europe finally merged with USSR, okay, after the Second World War. So most of the economy of Soviet Union was invested on Eastern Europe also to maintain these satellite states. These states are called satellite states of Eastern Europe. And within the Soviet Union, the five, as I have told you this also, and within the Soviet system there were 5 Central Asian republics in particular. From Central Asia there were 5 countries which were a part of USSR, and most of the economy was invested to maintain these 5 countries, as economically, politically, socially these countries were very weak, and they were totally dependent on USSR. So most of the economy of USSR was also invested to maintain these 5 Central Asian republics. This led to a huge economic burden that the system could not cope with. So because of maintaining so many Eastern countries, Eastern European countries, and Central Asian countries, which were the allies of USSR, to maintaining all the economic, political, social system of so many countries, it was such an economic burden of on USSR. And also most of the economy they were investing on maintaining their arms and arsenal to be abreast with the USSR US technology. So before I move on from this place, let me show you some of the states of USSR which were the allies of USSR, so you can relate this topic properly. So you will also find the map at the last page of your book. So I'm showing you the map here now. So you can see this is the world map. This is United States of America, US, one of the important superpower during the Cold War and after the Second World War. And here you can see this is Russia, okay, and this is Europe, you can see. And I hope you can see this green part. This was Germany, and from where we had drawn the Berlin Wall. This was East Germany, and this was West Germany. So, eight countries, these eight countries of Europe were a part of USSR. So they were the allies of USSR. So USSR also took care of, these were called the satellite states, and these Central Asia, you can see the location of India. This is West Asia, this is Southeast Asia, okay, and this is called Central Asia, okay. So these countries like Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, okay, so these five countries were the countries which are called Central Asian countries, and which were the allies of USSR. So USSR had to invest lot of money and economy for maintaining these states, so that they were the allies of USSR. So this was the condition of USSR, and we are saying its economy was going stagnant, and it was becoming weaker and weaker. One of the important reasons for its collapse, because it had economic pressure to maintain these satellite states and these Central Asian states. So I hope with the map you will be able to understand that, okay. So now here is another important point from here, which you have seen as one of the important factor for the disintegration of USSR. At the same time, ordinary citizens became more knowledgeable. Now, all the people of the republics who were living under USSR, who were following the ideology of communism and socialism, so now they become more knowledgeable with the increase in technology, with the improvement in communication, as well as in technology. Transportation increased. So their people became more knowledgeable. They started getting more and more information around the world, about the world, about the economic advances. They also knew about the economic system of the West. West means US and its allies. So now the people of USSR who were following the ideology of socialism and communalism, they knew more and more about the Western world, what type of lifestyle they were living in, what was capitalism, what was liberal democracy, what was I would say their participation in for the government. They elected their representatives, right to vote, all these things they were coming to know now. So that is why we are saying they became more knowledgeable now. So they could see the disparities between their systems, so they now started comparing their own system with the Western world. So they saw a lot of disparity, means there were a lot of differences, and we could say there were discriminations after years of being told that, because from many years they were being told that Soviet system was the best. From the very beginning, it was told to the people of Soviet Union, all the republics which were a part of Soviet Union, they were being told that their system was better than Western capitalism. The reality of their backwardness came to a political and psychological shock. But when they become knowledgeable, the reality was in front of their eyes, and they realized how backward the countries of USSR were, the members of USSR, or the countries followed the ideology of socialism and communism, how backward they were as compared to the Western world. So this was like a political and psychological shock to the people of USSR, who always had been thinking that their ideology was the most prominent and the good one around the world. But when they became knowledgeable because of the advanced technology, communication, and good transportation system, so they realized that how backward they were if they compared themselves to the Western world. So there was a lot of disparity and differences amongst these two systems. So it was like a political and psychological shock, because from the years and the decades, it was told to the people that their system was better system than the Western world. So now after second point, third important point is Soviet Union had become stagnant in an administrative and political sense as well. So we talked that Soviet Union or the USSR became weak in terms of its political and economic institutions, but here it became stagnant in its administrative and political sense as well. It means the Communist Party that had ruled the Soviet Union for over 70 years was not accountable to the people. Now we are talking about the authority, about the administration, about the government which was running the USSR republics. which were maintaining the law and order under these countries. So now we are talking about that particular party, that was the Communist Party. It had been ruling this USSR and the republics of USSR from the last 70 years now, after 1945. Okay, but this government was not accountable to the people. Now people became knowledgeable, so they saw what was democracy, what was right to vote, what how people elected their representative. But all that system mechanism was not followed under these USSR republics. And here there was a single party, dominant party, that was Communist Party. And that party was not accountable to the people. It means it did not have to give any clarifications or any reasons or any opinions to the people or for the people. Ordinary people were alienated by the slow and stiff administration. People were kept aloof. They were not kept in mind while making any decisions, any policies, any developmental activities. It was all decided and implemented by the Communist Party or the government or the administration, a particular group. People were not involved in any decision making. Okay, and there were a lot of corruption as well, but still the party was unaccountable. They did not have to give any clarifications to anyone. Such was the power of the Communist Party under USSR. But people were realizing it now slowly and gradually, the inability of the system to correct mistakes it had made. And they did not wanted to correct any mistake, although they realized there was a mistake from the government, from the administration. But still they did not wanted to improve any mistakes which were they were willing, and unwillingness to allow more open, and they were not allowing any openness, any power, any authority to the people. All was covered and governed by the government. In terms of government, we are talking about the communist government, and the centralized of the authority in a vast land. So all the powers and authority were centralized. There were certain people in the authority, bureaucrats we can say, who were having all the powers. It's written here. Words Worse still, the party bureaucrats gained more privileges. So the bureaucrats who were important members of the ruling party, those implemented various policies and plans for the people of USSR. So all the powers were centered around those particular people or a group of people. More privileges were given to them. Now we can see this society, as we read, was based on the pattern and ideology of equality. But you will see there were disparity between the common people and the people who were under these bureaucrats. So they were getting the more privileges than ordinary citizens. People did not identify the system and with the rulers, and the government increasingly lost popular backing. So slowly and slowly, because of all these reasons, if you will see the administration and type of administration which became more authoritative and more bureaucratic with the passage of time, people started realizing what was democracy, what was the Western political system. And there was so much of disparity and differences between the Western world and the Eastern world that was run by USSR. So here government started losing its popular backing. Now people were not happy with the government. The life of the people became very difficult under such a old regime, and they did not wanted to follow this system anymore. So these are the steps we are moving towards, how it disintegrated. So these are some of the important factors which led to the collapse and disintegration of USSR. Next is, as we have read about Gorbachev in the last lecture, that Gorbachev and the disintegration, in which we saw what was his role when we talk about the disintegration of USSR. Although he wanted to make a good impact on the society, he wanted to work for the good for the society, he wanted to make economic and political reforms so that the lifestyle of the people could improve. He wanted to democratize, bring more democracy and freedom for the people. But unfortunately his ideas and his goals could not be achieved. In fact, he was punished, I would say, where he lost the support of the common people as well as the people of its own party opposed him. So he lost support from both the sides. This is we are going to discuss here in this particular part. Here, Gorbachev reforms promised to deal with these problems. As we saw, Gorbachev made political and economic reforms and to solve the problems of the people, as he realized that how difficult it was for the people to survive under such a tight political system. So he tried to make some reforms. But Gorbachev promised to reform the economy, catch up with the West. He wanted to reform the economical system of USSR so that they can catch up with the West, so they can be equally following the ideology like Western world. and losing the administration. It means the administration, the government, the political party had a tight control over the authority of all the republics of USSR. So he wanted to loosen the administrative, he wanted to increase the participation of the people in the government decision making. You may wonder why Soviet Union collapsed in spite. So why Soviet Union collapsed? Still, why Soviet Union collapsed? So you can see here that in 1985, as we read, he became the General Secretary of USSR. So he became the General Secretary. He wanted to make economic and political reforms to make life of the people much better, like same in the Western world. So why did Soviet Union collapse in spite of Gorbachev's accurate diagnosis? Diagnosis means like we go to the doctor if we have some symptoms and he diagnoses us, he tells us what is the exact problem we are having, and accordingly he gives us the medicines and treatment. In the same way, Gorbachev saw and accurately he saw that what was the real problem of USSR. But apart from that, still USSR disintegration. The problem and his attempt to implement reforms. What were the problems and the reforms he wanted to implement? But still, why Soviet Union was disintegrated? Here is where the answer becomes more controversial. Here the answer becomes more controversial. We have to depend on future historians to guide us better. So let's see what were the reasons. Although the Gorbachev had diagnosis and saw the real problems of USSR, and he wanted to make so many important reforms for the people so that people could be satisfied with the rule of the government. But still, let's see, the most basic answer seems to be the when Gorbachev carried out his reforms and loosened the system, he set in motion forces and expectation that few could have predicted and became virtually impossible to control. Here we are trying to understand when Gorbachev talked about the reforms, okay, and reforms, economic and political reforms, and he also wanted to loosen the government or the administrative system where people could be given more importance and more power and authority. So in this case, people had did not had any patience and they wanted to move very fast when we talked about reforms. But Gorbachev could not fulfill the expectations of the people, and as people said, he made reforms, it was very good, but the rate at which he was making reforms were very slow, because at this time people had already tasted the freedom, they knew about the Western world, they became more knowledgeable, so they did not wanted to make so slow reforms in the political and economic system. They wanted to move ahead same as the Western world. So this became one of the problem here. That's why it's written, he set in motion forces and expectations, the expectations of the people increased that few could have predicted, which he did not have predict that this is going to happen. And it became impossible to control the expectations and demands of the people as they wanted to move very fast. There were sections of the Soviet society which felt that Gorbachev should have moved much faster. So there were many people in the Soviet society where people said, okay, Gorbachev was doing a good job, he was making good diagnosis of the problems, and he was making good reforms, but he would have moved much faster, and were disappointed and impatient with his methods. So people were disappointed and impatient with his methods because they wanted freedom, they wanted a new system in place. But at the rate which Gorbachev was making reforms was much slower as expected by the people. They wanted him to be more swift and fast with his actions, which did not happen. So they did not benefit in the way they had hoped. So they didn't, people were not getting benefits as they hoped from the reforms made by the Gorbachev, or if they benefited, that was too slow. Others, especially members of the Communist Party and those who were served by the system, took exactly the opposite view. So this was the one part where people were opposed to him because he was making reforms, but at the rate he was making reforms was very slow. So people were not happy with his method now. And on the other hand, his own party members, the members of the Communist Party, those who served by the system, took exactly the opposite view. Now the view of the Communist Party was opposite to the people, where the people of the Communist Party thought that Gorbachev was moving too fast, and which was not required. They said that making reforms so quickly is not good for the Soviet society. They felt that their powers and privileges were eroding. Here they started feeling that the powers of the Communist Party, privileges they were getting, they were eroding and decreasing slowly and slowly because Gorbachev was moving too quickly. So you can see two differing views. The common people of all the republics were not satisfied with Gorbachev, because Gorbachev had promised the reforms. That was very okay. People were happy. But at the rate which he was making reforms, people thought it was very slow. On the other hand, people of the Communist Party, or the members of the Communist Party, they thought that Gorbachev was making reforms, and because of those reforms, the powers and privileges of the people of the Communist Party or the bureaucrats was eroding slowly and slowly. So, and they also thought that Gorbachev was moving too quickly. So two different views you can see here. Okay, so there was a tug of war. We have seen a game, एक side से where we see a rope, one group holds the rope, and from the other end the other group holds the rope and they pull. So that is called tug of war. So there was like a tug of war here. Now Gorbachev lost support. So in this tug of war, in this game of tug of war, the person who was at lost was Gorbachev, Mikhail Gorbachev himself, where he lost support of all sides. He lost support of both the sides. Okay, people now stopped following him, stopped supporting him, and his own party members were also opposed to him. It's written Gorbachev lost support of all sides and divided public opinion. Even those who were with him became illusioned as they felt that he did not adequately defend his own policies. Last important point is, all this might not, all the factors we have seen, apart from that, still Soviet Union would have not collapsed or disintegrated. But for another development, this surprised most observers and indeed many insiders, the rise of nationalism. So this is important. There was a rise of nationalism now. Previously, we saw that USSR was following a common ideology of socialism and communalism. But now the 14 republics plus Russia, in the many republics and many countries, there emerged a feeling of nationalism, that is Desh Bhakti. So living under such a strict political system and such a strict economic system where all the productive resources were controlled by the state, so in such a system there emerged a feeling of nationalism and a desire for sovereignty. Now all the states wanted a sovereign state. They wanted to sovereign, they wanted to be free from USSR control. Within various republics, there were some republics which wanted sovereignty now, and we have discussed it. Okay, Russia and the Baltic republics are Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, these three states or three countries of East Europe were called the Baltic republics or the Baltic states. Okay, Ukraine, Georgia, these are some of the important states of we would say Eastern Europe, which had now started thinking of nationalism, and they had a desire for sovereignty. Now they wanted to be free from this rule, and others proved to be final and the most immediate cause. So this was one of the final and immediate cause. So when it comes to the final and immediate cause, you will have to write the rise of nationalism and the desire for sovereignty, and from where these rise of nationalism and sovereignty came from all the factors we have covered till now, where people were facing so many difficulties in their political, social and economic life. Okay, the system was so tight, so strict. So finally people wanted to get freedom. There were various demonstrations in the different parts of USSR republics. So this was one of the immediate cause for the final and the immediate cause for the disintegration of USSR. Okay, so these are some of the important factors you need to understand. So with this we come to the topic that is end to the topic, that is why did the Soviet Union disintegrate. Same topic I am going to discuss it in your Zoom meeting also. So you need to read the content of the NCERT book properly. Till then, take care. Thank you.